Are Nephilim demons, or are they just half human, half angels?
Nephilim, the actual term, is a term to describe the disembodied spirits of half angelic and half human beings. The term Nephilim itself is translated in the Septuagint as gigos, which is giants. And because they are this unholy mixture, they are part spiritual being, but they're part human. And now their spiritual reality, after their body dies, it has nowhere to go. So the spirit is disembodied because it takes after angelic kind of patronage. And in light of that, it's stranded on the earth. These Nephilim become these warrior kings, but they're also savage. They tear apart things, they're cannibals, they drink blood. All of these things are all present, but when they are killed, when they're taken care of, Og of Bashan in the Bible is considered a Nephilim. Nimrod is very likely of a Nephilim descendant. Goliath comes from the clan of the Nephilim. After they die, their spirits are aimless. They're wandering. They're trying to make sense of, and this is why they want to embody. This is why they want to possess.
Right.
They have a feel.
They don't have anywhere to. And
they remember what it was like to be embodied, right? This is also why I think they go chaotic and they go kind of mad, because they're just trapped, aimless.
So do you think they all were decimated in the flood, or are they still with us?
Oh man, you really messed me up. Okay,
you already told me your answer by that. That pause told me I gotta go and tuck my kids in tonight and tell them be careful. There's Nephilim out here. That's what you just said.
No. Listen, here's what I think. The text in Genesis 6:1-4, it says that the Nephilim were on the earth in those days and in the days after, and you got to deal honestly with that. Yep. And you got to figure out what's going on with Joshua and the conquest. One of the things about Joshua and the conquest is he seems to be a part of. I'm not saying the entire conquest. I'm just saying a part of the conquest seems to be dealing with the leftover Nephilim, referred to as giant clans. This is why David fights Goliath.
That's right.
Goliath from Gath. What is Gath? A giant clan. Goliath has brothers that later the David narrative tell us that he's got to deal with those Nephilim as well, right? And so part of the issue is the issue of the flood. What happens with the flood? Man, this is going to make people so upset.
For everybody who doesn't know where he's going, Shaq is a Nephilim. That's what he's trying to say. It's why it's unfair for him to have been in the NBA, because he's I'm just joking.
But honestly, if it's anybody, it's Wemby.
Wemby's a Nephilim.
I mean, that's man, true. That man got handles.
It's out of control.
He's shooting three-pointers like it's a free throw.
It's out of control.
It's out of control.
It's either godly or demonic. I don't know which one.
We don't know which one. Or God is redeeming all things.
That's it, okay.
And we're living in light of the cross. And so, you know what I'm saying?
I like that.
The flood possibly was not a global flood. The Hebrew phrase kol haaretz, the whole earth, is a phrase that's used elsewhere by the biblical authors to talk about the known world or the known land to the author at the time. So when it says the whole earth flooded, it could very well be that the whole earth is in the mind of the ancient writer and what they know of, and there's this cataclysmic, like massive event that takes place, and it's a flood, it's a deluge.
All right, shalom, shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rekakwadash, giving double honors to the apostles and elders of the great millstone. Shalom to the hopefully elect. Shalom to all the brothers out here laboring in this truth with sincerity. Shalom to the few sisters that watch. It's coming back with another lesson. As we saw in the beginning, clips, it says, these people don't understand, what Nephilim means. You saw the artist Lecrae. He's a hip hop gospel rapper or something like that. And you had this guy Joel Muddamalle, which has a PhD, has over 100,000 followers, and has no understanding. He looks as if he's an Elamite, and that would explain why he don't understand the scriptures. Because the Holy Spirit is not dealing with this man. As we see, he's a so-called theologian. He's an expert in theology and therapy, but this man has absolutely no understanding of the scriptures, man, with over 100,000 followers. And that is crazy. So We just gonna jump right into it. You know, the book of Genesis chapter 6, what they were actually talking about. And this guy has no understanding about. And you see him deflecting, you know, when the Lecrae, you know, asks him certain questions, you know, he get all squirmish because he don't know, has no understanding. So this is the book of Genesis chapter 6, and we'll just start from the top. It says, and it came to pass when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born unto them. You know, this is going into the nations multiplying, because this is the beginning, the book of Genesis, you know. So nations are multiplying, people are being born throughout the earth. Verse 2, it says, and the sons of God saw the daughters of men that they were fair. So the sons of God would be what you call today the Israelites, you know. As we know, that later became the name, but it's still the same lineage through Seth, you know, which this took place after the flood. But before that, you had the Adamites. You know, Adam was the first to receive the knowledge, wisdom, and understanding from Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai. So therefore, you know, we were called the sons of God, which later became the Israelites. It says, saw the daughters of men that they were fair, and the daughters of men would be the children, the women of the other nations, you know, which today, you know, we would know them as heathens, you know. And it says they were fair, you know, which could go into how they looked, you know, also goes into understanding, you know, maybe they you know, they probably was in order, you know, basically, you know, they were in order as well as looking good. It says they took them wives of all which were chose. So they began to have children with them, you know, marry them, which that was going off, because you were not to marry women of the other nations, you know, and that's brought out in the book of Deuteronomy, you know, but we won't go into it. But it says, verse 3, it says, and the Lord Yahweh said, my spirit shall not always strive with men, for that he also is flesh, yet his days shall be 120 years. And verse 4 is the verse, you know, that we really want to focus on as it pertains to the Nephilim, as, you know, those two men have no understanding about. So it says there were giants in the earth in those days. So, you know, we're going to go into this word giants, which is going to, you know, when we look it up, it's going to be Nephilim. So it says, and also after that, when the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men, and they were bare, and they bare children to them, the same became mighty men, which were of old, men of renown. So, you know, what you would call the Israelites today, the sons of God, would have sex with the daughters of men, the other nation, and they had children. You know, the seed is carried through the father. You know, the book of Numbers chapter 1 verse 18 goes into that. So let's jump back up to the word giants. You know, they would have you thinking it is of stature, you know, a large giant human being, or I think he said a demon, if I'm not mistaken. They were talking about demons. You know, they had absolutely no understanding of what was going on. So let's go into this word giants. And this word in the Hebrew is Napoleon. Napoleon. Napoleon is what it translates to in Hebrew. Let's see. Salakia. says giants, Nephilim. The Nephilim. So they'll have you think it's like a large angel or some mystical creature or something of that nature. But we know that if they are angels, you know, they don't have sex, man. They don't even think about sex. You know, that's a flesh thing of the flesh, Shalakia. So let's go to the book of 1 Corinthians chapter 40. Because you have two type of beings. This is the book of 1 Corinthians chapter 15 and verse 40. It says, there are also celestial bodies and bodies terrestrial. But the glory of the celestial is one, and the glory of the terrestrial is another. So the celestial would be what you consider of the heavens. You know, it also goes into the moon, the stars, but as we'll see, it goes into even in the heavens. So let's get this word celestial. It says celestial refers to anything related to the sky, outer space, or heaven. It says derived from the Latin. It describes physical objects like stars, planets, astronomy, divine, angelic, or other outer worldly beings. It says in mythology, which that's what they really are into, thinking that, you know, something is of giants. It says, and implies supreme beauty, ethereal, or heavenly qualities in literature. And it goes on. It says, describes beings that inhabit heaven, such as angels or spirits. You know, and they will have you think that it was fallen angels, you know, going all the way off. Matter of fact, let's go to the book of Matthew. Because if these were, you know, giants, fallen angels, they're not thinking about sex, man, if they're from the heavens, you know. Let's go to the book of Matthew chapter 22 and verse 29. This is our Lord Yahushua speaking. It says, Yahushua answered and said unto them, ye do err not knowing the scriptures, nor the power of the Most High. For in the resurrection they neither marry, which, you know, we know marriage, sex is the consummation of marriage. It says, nor are given in marriage, but are as the angels in God in heaven. So this lets you know that the angels don't think about sex. You know, they don't think about marriage. You know, they're not into that. That's a fleshly thing, man. So let's go back to the book of Genesis. Like I said, Lord willing is edifying. Chapter 6. Because it's not even hard, man. You know, you got so many outlets you can look at these days and actually get an understanding. But, you know, when you're trying to appeal to the masses and be extra deep, you know, you end up looking like a fool, especially when you deal with us. That's why these people hate us, man. You know, they don't have an understanding. And they look at us, okay, this guy got a PhD, but yet and still, if he comes to any GMS Atlanta camp, GMS camp, Salakia, I'm in the GMS Atlanta camp, but if he came to any GMS camp, he'd be made look like a fool, man, even though he has a PhD. So let's go into this word, Nephilim. Let's go to the lexicon and let's see. Because it actually explains it. Hold on. Let's see. Right here. Salakia. That's it right here. let's see. It says, we're going to drop down. It says, which gig, right here in the middle. It says, and cast, render, great, large in body. Next, you see it says, but this is incorrect. For it means excellent, noble, skillful. It don't mean large in body. And that's how simple it is to find the answer to what you're looking for, man. You know, so this guy trying to sound all extra deep and don't know what's going on. So, you know, with that being said, I just went further into it, into chat, and I know it's going to come up. Let's see. Right here. So, you know, I just typed it in. And right here, I typed in lexicon says, what is incorrect? You know, we already know the answer. You know, I knew that, but I just wanted to see what chat said. It says, when people say the lexicon say Nephilim are giants, that it not actually, Salakia, that is not exactly what the Hebrew lexicon literally says. The word giants is actually a translation choice, not the core definition of the Hebrew word. And we have it right here, Strong's definition. Nephilim. Definition given in the lexicon. Nephilim, giants, from Napoleon, to fall. To fall. The lexicon itself notes the root meaning relates to falling. Matter of fact, let's go to that. Let's get the root. Let's go to it. Giants. Root word. To fall. To be cast down. So basically, men were giants in the earth. Men of great abilities, you know, like now, even in our lower state, you know, we're above the rest of these nations, man. And we're at the lowest that we ever been. But yet and still, we are the salt of the earth. You look at all the top athletes. In any sport, if Jake is involved, they're going to be at the top. You know, even when it comes to inventions, all of this, that's being a giant. That's basically what it's saying. But let's go back to the scriptures. You know, because the Lord actually, you know, brought me in low. So verse 5, it says, and Yahweh Shem Shai saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. Why? Following after the women of these other nations, man. You know? So, let's see. Let's continue on. It says, and it repented the Lord Yahweh that he made man on the earth, and it grieved him at his heart. And the Lord said, I will destroy man whom I have created from the face of the earth, both man and beast, and the creeping things and the fowls of the air, for it repented me that I have made man. But Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord Yahweh. And we know later the flood came, Salakia, and men, you know, hey, the men were not as great as they were before because the Lord was angry with them, man. You know, basically that's what it's going to. The men fell from renown, and their strength was taken. So let's see. It says why giants is debated. It says the Hebrew word itself does not literally mean giant. The root word means to fall. Giants come from the Greek translation in the Septuagint, which used the word gigantes. The English Bible of the King James Version followed that tradition. Says, so the lexicon shows the root meaning, while giants was an interpretation. So, it goes into it, man. Then I did the depiction. This is what these people have in mind when they think of Book of Genesis, chapter 6 and verse 4. Totally going off. So it simply means to fall, the fallen ones, they fell from grace, from being with the women of the other nations, That's simply what it means, man. And being wicked, and now, we have who we are today, man, from going off. And once again, if I didn't mention it, Salakia, you have the sons. Matter of fact, let's go back to the scripture. I'm all over the place. Salakia for that too. I'm all over the place. But Salakia, let's go back to verse 2. It says, and that the sons of God, which were the Israelites, not actually called the Israelites, but of the same lineage, saw the daughters of men, which are the other nations, and then you had the sons of the wicked, which seed line came through Cain, and later became Esau, Edom. So that's really the understanding. Like I said, Lord willing, it was edifying. Once again, we'll go into this word, giants, which you see says the Nephilim. And you go into the root word, which means to fall, to lie, to be cast down. That's all it means, man. The men fell from grace. They were no longer great as they were. Hey, man. Basically, they had like spiritual powers back then, man, doing wonderful, great things. That we would look at now like, man, borderline superpowers, man. And you see, we still have that today, man. You have, in our low state, we always liken it to athletes, but you have entertainers, you have musicians, athletes, even inventors. We're the salt of the earth, man. So basically, that's what it's going into. So this guy with the PhD, really, you just going off, man. Joel Muddamalle, whatever his name is. It's simple, man. He's simple. He has no understanding. So, with that being said, Lord willing, this was edifying. I know I was all over the place in Salakia. So, we want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem Rekakwadash. Shalom.